If you've been on the internet at all in your life, you know that the internet's full of stories, but none like the story we will discuss today. It was written to shock, horrify, and even disgust you. Today, we're going to be talking about the Godzilla NES Creepypasta, the most notorious gaming creepypasta to ever be written. First, before we get into this horrifying tale, I should give you some backstory. The original Godzilla movie was released in Japan on November 3rd, 1954. It was a smash success and would spawn 38 other movies in its entire franchise, being one of the most, if not the most recognizable movie monsters of all time. So of course, there had to be games made for it. It wasn't until 1983 though, that the first Godzilla game came out simply titled Godzilla on the Commodore 64. It is a strategy game in which the player must command the military in an attempt to kill Godzilla before he destroys Tokyo. Godzilla's had a very long career in the video game industry since then, but today, this story will take us back to the era of the NES. In December of 1988, the game that this story spawned from was released on the Nintendo NES. Godzilla, Monster of Monsters, or as every Godzilla fan likes to jokingly call it, Godz, Monster of Monsters. In this game, you play as one of the two titular monsters of the series, Godzilla or Mothra, respectively. You go around fighting some very notable monsters from the Godzilla franchise, like Mechagodzilla, King Ghidorah, Gigan, and many more. The game will take you across the solar system, fighting them on different planets. Your main objective is to reach Planet X to stop the Zalians who have mind-controlled all these monsters and have caused the main events of the game to occur. The gameplay is pretty much what you expect from a game that was created and released in the late 80s to early 90s. It's a side-scroller where the progress you make is shown on a chess-like hexagonal map where you move forward after beating a level. You work your way through each planet, and at the end, there's always some sort of monster for you to fight and defeat. The game has 8 planets that you have to work your way through. You start on Earth, then you head your way through Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and ending it off at your main objective, Planet X. You may be asking yourself how a seemingly simple side-scroller Godzilla game would have to do with anything that would shock, horrify, or even disgust you. Well, let me tell you. It was on April 23rd, 2011, when a user by the name of CosbyDaff posted the story that we are discussing today on Bogleach. At first, it really wasn't a big deal, but seemingly overnight, this one simple creepypasta would take the horror community and the Godzilla community by storm, almost single-handedly changing the landscape of creepypastas forever. The Godzilla NES Creepypasta is thought to be one of, if not the most unsettling video game creepypasta ever created. It should also be considered one of the longest creepypastas of all time, cause oh my Godzilla is it long. Accompanying the story are various images depicting what is going on in the story. These images are also in the style of the original Godzilla Monster of Monsters game. The creepypasta is told from the point of view of a man named Zachary. He's gonna be our protagonist from now on, so keep that in mind. The story begins with him telling us the story of how he came into possession of this cursed copy of Godzilla, Monster of Monsters. He explains that he had recently gotten a new NES system and he had been looking for a copy of this game. Luckily, his friend Billy had managed to snag him a copy. You may be asking yourself, out of the whole catalog of games at the time for the NES, why would he be hunting for this one in particular? He goes on to explain that when he was a kid, he was completely obsessed with it. So he just had to get his hands on it. And I mean, I can't blame the guy. I had to beat an old lady with a stick just to get my hands on a copy of this game. And it's not even that good. Zachary states that he had gotten it for his birthday when he was younger, but ended up trading it in for another game. After finally booting up the game, everything seemed normal, just as he had remembered. That didn't last long though, because once he got into his first boss fight with Ghidorah, something strange happened. The fights normally last 30 to 40 seconds, but for some reason, it had bugged out and lasted up to 5 minutes, and none of his attacks were doing any damage. Soon after, the game started to glitch and the screen started to tear, making it unplayable. So like any normal person would, he took out the cartridge, blew on it, and put it back in the console, hoping that would fix the problem. And luckily, it did, and nothing ever happened after that. Just kidding. Once he reached Mars, some weird things started to happen, similar to the glitch that had happened before, but now it has gotten significantly more sinister. When he fought and defeated Godzilla for a second time, the game started to glitch. It started to display Godzilla's eyes all across the screen, over and over and over in a blood red color. It was at this point that Zachary could no longer ignore what was going on, and he suspected that there was something majorly wrong with this copy of the game. Even with all that being said, he still proceeded to fight Mogera, who ended up having a creepy glitch of its own. When he enters the battle with Mogera, Mogera is twice the size that it normally should have been. After quickly defeating Mogera, he expected it to disappear towards the bottom of the screen. Instead, it shattered and began to melt. When he is brought back to the battle map, he is greeted by a new monster, Titanosaurus, a monster not originally in the game. Even with these strange turn of events, he suspected nothing of it, assuming that he just had an unreleased version of this game with the secret Titanosaurus boss. This line of thinking led him to believe that everything that has happened before was intentional, so he brushed it off and continued to play the game. After fighting his way through the Mars base and all the enemies and bosses that came with it, he expected to move on to the next planet, Jupiter. Instead, he was greeted with a new planet, Pathos. So you may be saying, this story seems pretty tame so far. Nothing really disgusting or horrifying. Maybe a little creepy, but that's about it. Well, this is where the story takes a turn for the horrific. Once he loaded up the map, he noticed some key differences from the original. The map had been flipped, and also the color was changed from green to dark blue. Some of the icons here were changed, and now Titanosaurus was present here as well. The music had also turned into a more sinister tone, rather than the simple tone that came with the original. Oh, and Biollante was there too. But wait, you may be asking, how is Biollante in this game? The movie that it was featured in didn't come out until a year after the game did. Well, demon stuff, I guess. Zach, however, kept on saying that this was just an unreleased version of the game. Maybe that it was just an upgraded version that was supposed to come out after the movie did, so he tried not to worry about it. Most of the levels from here on out were barren, empty, and void of anything. Also, keep an eye on that red moon. It is very creepy, I know, but it will return later. So once he got through a couple of the stages, something strange began to happen. Most, if not all, the enemy monsters began to change. They were deformed and turned into something unrecognizable. None of this, however, prepared him for what was to come. Once he defeated all these enemies and reached the end boss, there was this horrifying looking face. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is where the story officially becomes disturbing. Yeah, I hope you were wearing your brown pants for that one. What you just witnessed is the level only known as Run. It was at this point that Zack finally understood that there was something definitely wrong here. He was now in a state of shock and was very confused from what he had just witnessed. It was also at this moment where Zack, as well as us, are introduced to the demonic entity only known as Red. Red is a scorpion-like demon creature that has 4 long pointy legs, a long pointy tail, and a disturbing humanoid face with 2 long arms that had hands with 3 sharp claws on each of them. Most people would turn the game off at this point, but not our boy Zachary. He still wanted to play. After a minute of thinking, Zack began to believe that this was just a hacked cartridge. Someone tampered with it and modded it somehow to have all these weird things happen. Maybe it was even his friend Billy playing an old birthday prank on him. From this point on, the game was completely different. Instead of having the 8 original worlds that the game originally had, they had now changed to Dementia, Entropy, Exodus, and Zenith. Red also has a huge role in the story from here on out, having many chase levels where you have to run from it in order to not be eaten. Red also takes on many forms, like his aquatic form and his flying form. In one of these chasing levels, things take a turn. When Zack gets to the end of the level, there is now a new platforming obstacle which Red eats like they're just pieces of candy. The biggest change happens when Zack manages to outrun Red and screams at the top of his lungs, "Not this time, asshole!" Once that last word left Zack's lips, Red stops and turns, looking out towards Zack with a cold, emotionless stare. Zack's blood runs cold, but again, he is able to convince himself that this is all part of the game and continues to play anyway. That only lasts up until Zack reaches the planet of Entropy, the 6th planet that he has gone to so far. The level of Entropy ends up being another weird and strange one. Like Pathos before, this level was mostly empty and void of any enemy types. The only thing visible was the kaiju that Zack was playing, a grass plain, and the bright pale white moon shining in the sky. Further along in the level, Zack reaches a body of water where unexpectedly the moon breaks open like an egg and a humanoid figure falls into the water. Suddenly, a giant monster pops out. This monster has been dubbed as Moon Beast. This wasn't the last of it though. The game starts to glitch and suddenly this happens. Now, to understand the significance of what just happened, we have to dive into the backstory of Zack's past. The way Zack put it, when he was in middle school, he had a girlfriend whose name happened to be Melissa. She had plenty of mental health issues and would go into episodes where she would be completely void of any emotion or expression. When they were finished, she would only speak softly and sometimes not say anything at all, burying her head into her hands. This shook Zack to his core on more than one occasion. Even with all this, he stuck around and supported her as much as he could. One night, when they were at one of their regular spots, Melissa just looked up, staring at the moon, trembling as she did. Zack tried to snap her out of it, but she had stood up and suddenly ran into oncoming traffic. She would end up dying that night after being hit by a truck. Zack witnessed the whole thing, even saying that he looked her right in the eyes when the wheel went over her neck. It was at this point in the story where Zack started putting everything together, and even the reader, if you've been paying attention to like little hints here and there, you would be able to put everything together. There was symbolism all over this game that now we can actually understand. Remember the eyes that appear all over the screen at the beginning of the game when Zack beats Godzilla? That is connected to what he saw that tragic night. The planets, trance, pathos, and dementia are all reference to some of the mental illnesses that Melissa had suffered from, or at least some of the effects of them. So it's not a hard conclusion to make that there is something seriously wrong with this copy of the game, and something supernatural is toying with Zack. It all points back to Red being the one to blame, though this isn't the end of the journey just yet. Zack, after beating all the other worlds and outrunning Red some more, makes it to a level that has a graveyard in it. In this graveyard, there seems to be nothing until a blue floating humanoid creature appears. Zack dubs this creature the Angel. Not too long after, Red appears and eats the Angel. Zack runs from Red once more and ends up at the final planet, Zenith. Zack marches forward and fights some very hyper-realistic creatures. After defeating them and getting through the last stages, Zack is confronted by a blank level. That is, until two red eyes begin to glow. Yes, Zack is finally going to confront Red, the demon that's been putting him through hell this entire night. Zack, eager to defeat Red after everything it has put him through, begins to attack it. The only downside, every hit that his kaiju takes, Zack feels it in real life. It had gotten so bad that at some point he noticed he could no longer move. Not his arms, not his legs, or anything really. Only his fingers to control the D-pad, and that's it. In his mind, he had only one mission now: to kill Red or die trying. Zack is being brutalized by Red, barely being able to get a hit in. At this point, he is in immeasurable pain and down to his last monster, Godzilla. And then a dark turn takes place. Red reveals to Zack that it is the one that killed Melissa, that he cannot defeat it. Red was the cause of all her pain. With a new spark of rage, Zack was determined to get revenge. Before Zack could even think of doing anything, Red's jaws unhinge and snaps wide open. It begins to eat Godzilla whole. Game over was all that was on Zack's screen. As he braces for the inevitable, something amazing happens. The angel from earlier reappears and confesses to Zack that it is the spirit of Melissa. Red has had her trapped and has been torturing her. Red will do the same to Zack if he does not win this battle. With one last act, she gives Zack one final gift: a new character, Arceus, the Golden Light. Zack returns to Red, and they have a brutal battle that Zack easily wins. Once Red has been defeated, Zack, along with all the monsters that have helped him along the way, teleport to the graveyard from earlier. The spirit of Melissa thanks him for his grisly battle and is reassuring in saying that they will see each other again someday. After this, Zack goes on to figure out where this cartridge came from with no avail. So you may be asking, what did he do with this cartridge? He sold it on eBay. Yeah, he probably just cursed someone else and he did not care. He just sold it on eBay. Man, it could be this copy of the game that I bought. It could be this one, and I wouldn't know because I don't have an NES to play it on. But yeah, he just cursed someone else. He didn't even care. He did not care. So that was the horrifying story of the Godzilla NES Creepypasta. And how does it hold up? It's still really, really good. Honestly, I had to revisit it before I started writing the script. I had to listen to OG Fan 1993, I think. I forgot his name. How do I forget his name? I used to watch him a lot when I was a kid. But he did a whole series on reading out the entire Godzilla NES Creepypasta. And it's not short. It's really long. So for him to do that was awesome. And I went to go do that. And I went and read some of the like little pieces of it myself when I was researching it. And yeah. I'm a big Godzilla fan and I'm a horror fan, and those things don't really cross over as often as you think, especially since Godzilla was a horror movie first. And people will fight me on it and say it's not a horror movie and it just has disturbing elements. No, it's a horror movie. It's a nuclear horror movie just with a giant fucking monster in it. I still really enjoyed this creepypasta, and it sucks that there's not a lot of creepypastas that are written like this anymore. I mean, Trevor Henderson and The Backrooms, even though people don't really consider those creepypastas, are giving me some hope that internet horror will continue and it will be great nonetheless. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.